The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 8th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are descendants of Abraham and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying, 'You will be made free'?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The Son has a place there forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. Well, as I come to you on this first Sunday that I get to preach to you, I may be dating myself just a little bit by the way that I open this sermon, and I will begin with a question. It's easy. No big, deep theological stuff here. Do any of you remember the movie The Matrix? Yes, some, okay. You can raise hands. I know we're Lutheran. We don't know what to do with our hands. In case you don't remember that, that's the one with Keanu Reeves, and it had all those super cool special effects, right? At least they seem cool back in 1999. I'm not so sure how well they have held up in the years since. But in case you never saw that movie, some of you are way too young to have seen that movie, or maybe you've forgotten what that movie was about, I'll kind of set the scene for you a little bit. The movie was set in the distant future, and it wasn't a very pleasant future. See, the artificial intelligence that humanity had created had risen up against humankind, and there had been a war, and the machines had won. And they have enslaved almost the entire population. But as the movie opens, we don't know that. We only know what Neo, who is the Keanu Reeves main character, knows. By day, he is Thomas Anderson, kind of a normal, average, boring guy with a normal, average, boring office job, and he goes there every day, and he does what he has to do. Then he goes home, and he becomes Neo, who is this brilliant computer hacker. And Neo has become obsessed with finding out about the Matrix. He's only heard whispers of it. He's seen traces of it in the computer programming that he's hacking, but he doesn't know what it is, and he feels like there is some bigger piece he is missing, and he wants desperately to know what the Matrix is. And so as we go along in the movie and the story unfolds, Neo is brought to meet with Morpheus, a man who claims to have the truth. And as they are meeting and talking, he offers Neo a choice. Take the blue pill, and Neo can wake up in his very own bed, and he can believe whatever it is he wants to believe about all of the things that have transpired and brought him to this point. Or take the red pill. Take the red pill and keep going down the rabbit hole, following it to the truth. But Morpheus warns him, the choice is final. Whichever one you pick, there's no going back. Which do you choose? Which would you choose? We come to this story that we hear every Reformation Sunday, this story from John's Gospel, and we see Jesus offering, in a way, a similar choice to his listeners. If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, Jesus says. And you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Now understand that these people who are listening to him are folks who've been tagging along after Jesus for a while. They have been listening as he teaches, and they like what they've been hearing. These, John describes them, as are the people, the Jews who have believed in Jesus. All through John's gospel, we always see Jesus butting heads with the religious leaders. These are not those people. These are people who are in favor and excited and happy about what Jesus has been saying. So you would think, that they would jump at the chance to learn more, to go deeper, to know the truth, and to be made free. But instead, his words meet with resistance. His listeners are offended. We come from Abraham. We've never been slaves to anybody. What are you talking about? You will be made free. So Jesus tries to explain what he's getting at in a different way. Because, of course, we who are sitting here this morning know he's not just talking about physical slavery. Jesus is talking about something deeper. This is spiritual slavery Jesus is referring to. Very truly, I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. Strong words from Jesus. No avoiding what he's saying here. As often is the case in our worship time, we don't get the whole passage. We get, a small piece. But if we kept going in this chapter from John, we would see what a strong reaction Jesus gets. The people freak out. They say, "We're not illegitimate children. God is our Father. Are we wrong to accuse you of being a Samaritan? Are we wrong to say you have a demon?" Them's there, fighting words right there. And at the end of this whole scene, they pick up stones to throw at Jesus. They're so enraged, he says here, that they want to kill him. But it's not Jesus' time yet, and so he hides and he leaves the temple where this whole scene has taken place. But you know it's not just Jesus' ancient listeners who are offended by Jesus' words in the gospel this morning. We struggle with this very thing, especially when we hear these words Jesus says, "Everyone who commits a sin is a slave to sin." I mean, really, who among us wants to admit to our sin? Here on this Reformation Day, as we celebrate and lift up our heritage, we Lutherans have through the centuries talked this really good game about how we are both saint and sinner at the same time. But I think we prefer much of the time to talk about the saint part and not look too closely at our sin. We don't take the news that we are slaves to sin too kindly. I mean, sure, we all have our struggles. We all have those things that we know aren't quite up to God's standards. But don't you think that calling us slaves is taking it a bit too far, Jesus? I mean, really? Much of the time, we don't want to acknowledge how strong sin's grip is on us. I think given the choice, we would choose the blue pill of ignorance over that red pill that leads us to the truth. But back to Neo for a minute, because we left him there with that same choice. Blue pill, red pill, which will you choose? And it wouldn't be much of a movie if he took the blue pill. So he takes the red pill, and when he wakes up suddenly, gasping for breath, he's in this kind of a pod thing, for lack of a better word, covered with goo, tethered in place by cables that are attached to the back of his neck and all the way down his spine and down his chest and his arms and his legs and his hands and his feet. And when he sits up and looks around, he sees thousands, millions of these pods surrounding him, all containing a human being. All of them having a human who has no idea that they are prisoners. Prisoners whose energy is being harvested by the machines who have to keep them enslaved in order to ensure their very existence. And suddenly, finally, the people who are working outside of the matrix, this fictitious digital world, key in on Neo's signal, And they from the cables, and he is dumped unceremoniously out of the bottom of the pod, and he drops into this river of water below. A river that washes him clean. And the spaceship comes and picks him up, and he is rescued and brought face to face with Morpheus, this time in real life. Only to learn as he meets with him over these days the truth that his entire existence up to this point has been a lie, a digital figment of his imagination, a virtual reality that is the Matrix. Neo never knew he was a slave until he was set free. Now, that's not to say that everything is sunshine and roses after they come and rescue him. Because Neo, as they tell him the truth, is kind of like my daughter who never wants to be told no and says to my husband and I all the time, "You don't tell me the truth." All the time. We don't know where she got that. Don't tell me the truth. And Neo kind of has that same response. He struggles to get, this can't be true. This isn't real. And you know, there's 2 more movies after this. There's 2 sequels after this movie to tell the story of the rebellion and the resistance. But it starts in this moment. Learning the truth about himself and the world around him is the beginning of Neo's path to true freedom. This is how the truth works. Jesus comes into our world, the embodiment of the truth with a capital T, and he tells us that truth. The truth about ourselves, the truth about our sin, the truth about the brokenness of the world around us. And sometimes that's a hard pill. We want to say, don't tell me the truth, Jesus. We don't want to face this reality that we are enslaved by sin and cannot free ourselves. We'd like to think that we can figure it out on our own, that we can somehow get ourselves out of our own messes if only we try hard enough, if we believe hard enough. But we can't. I mean, this is what Luther wrestled with and struggled with, this sense of guilt and not being good enough, and finally coming to this moment, knowing that left to our own devices, we would be forever trapped by our sin, trapped by all of that that lives within us, that resists God and rebels against God and wants its own way, all of the ways and the things in us that fall short of being God's people, the people God designed and created us to be. But the good news in this story, the truth that Martin Luther realized in that revelation so many years ago, is that God doesn't leave us to our own devices. We don't have to find a way to rescue ourselves. We aren't called to set ourselves free. That's Jesus' job. Jesus, the Son, comes into our world to set us free. And like Neo, we get our first glimpse of that freedom in the water, the baptismal waters that we get to celebrate and remember today, the waters that wash us clean and make us new, the waters that kill our old selves and raise us up to new life in Christ. But those waters are just the beginning of the story. It doesn't end there. To tell you, little one, that this is not the beginning of sunshine and roses for us either. We continue to struggle every day against sin and the power it has over us. But as we continue in Christ's word, as we follow Jesus as disciples, Jesus makes himself known to us. Jesus, the truth. And in the light of his truth, we are continually being reshaped, remade, reformed, transformed to become more like him, changed to become the children of God God says we are. Despite all that we do and all that we fail to do and all of the things we are unable to do to free ourselves, Jesus, the Son, comes to set us free. And if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Thanks be to God. Amen.